Good afternoon. I'm actually joining you evening time from the East Coast today, but you all are joining us at our San Francisco Products Account webinar. And we do have a great speaker lined up for you as soon as he is able to successfully get in. I'm really excited about the content that he'll be sharing, which is really the continuation of the theme that we talked about last month on product-led growth. He's going to focus on how do we expand down market, or even more broadly as we think about into new markets. But before we jump into that content, I do want to share a couple of fun facts with you about Products That Count, because it is a really great community that you all should really be leveraging if you aren't already doing so. The fact that you're here tells me you are leveraging it a bit, but there's opportunities to always leverage it more. So who is Products That Count? Is a nonprofit that reaches over 500,000 product people, mostly product managers, but I'm sure we've got designers and other roles in product, that are attending and learning and listening. It is one of the biggest product communities in the world, so really staggering with the 500,000. And there's thousands of video content, podcasts, articles. You can find that on the website or the Products That Count YouTube channel, which you can get linked to by going directly to the website and then jumping into that channel. And a lot of this content is offered by VP level or C-suite level individuals. So as I like to say, if you're looking for an expert take on a particular topic, there is no better place to look than Products That Count, because you're getting the experts talking to you about what has worked for them and frankly what they've learned along their journey, because sometimes it doesn't work and we learn a lot from our failures. And so that's a great place for you to accelerate your own learning. So start with Products That Count. It's a great place to really look for anything that you need on the product front. Now, a little bit about me before we dive into today's content. So outside of my role here as the San Francisco chapter lead for Products That Count, I'm the Chief Product Officer at NeoGov. If you don't know about NeoGov, we provide a robust HR and public safety platform for the government. So it's really purpose-built. It's designed for them and specifically their needs and experiences. So that's a little bit about me. And to the main event, as I just check in on Varun, here he is. Amazing. So again, as we are building kind of on last month's content, last month we talked about, growing a growth team. And today's webinar really dives into the realm of market expansion with the specific focus on extending traditional enterprise products down into SMB. So our speaker, Varun, brings a versatile set of experiences across product development, strategy consulting, and product marketing, which is his role now. And I really think it's Varun's journey marked by this passion for how to unlock new markets through things like product-led growth, leveraging this diverse set of experiences across these industries that's made him so impactful. So I'll say it's that unique blend that has equipped him to really craft these effective go-to-market strategies and really drive transformational value for customers. So today he's going to share some of his insights on how to do that, a model that he has crafted through those experiences, really offer actionable strategies for you to put to work to really help you penetrate into that SMB space. Or again, more broadly looking at how you might attack new markets. So like I said before, for those of you that were listening, the back half of this, we're going to field questions. So please drop it into the Q&A section here at Zoom, in Zoom throughout the chat. And with that, Varun, take us away.
Awesome. Firstly, before I share my screen, I want to apologize for the delay in joining. It's not a perfect webinar or an event without some technical issues. So with that, let me get started. Can you see the screen okay?
Looks great, though. You might want to move to presentation mode.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, you're all set.
Perfect. Let's get started. And thanks a lot for the intro, Denise. And as Denise mentioned, today specifically, I want to share my experiences or my observations on what it takes for enterprises or products that were actually successful in capturing the enterprise markets to move down market to capture the SMB and high growth startup segments. This is something that I'm very passionate about because uh, it's contrarian to the David and Goliath story. Every, Always the hero is the David, but what about the Goliath? I That is where this thought started. Essentially, like if you are already a leader in a particular segment, how do you expand? How do you expand your foothold into a market? Before I dive into the details, I want to add a little bit more color around who am I. Essentially, Denise gave a little bit of background. I started my life as an engineer, then moved into data science and engineering, moved into strategy consulting a bit. So that part in me is still alive. I'm a technologist at heart, but somewhere along the way, maybe in my childhood or later, I've acquired the bug of storytelling. I'm deeply passionate about storytelling, not just in terms of marketing, but in terms of products itself. I believe everything that we experience around us in terms of products or messages is a story that is to be told. And the more emotionally you connect with it, the more successful a product is. Um, in Outside of my work, I'm a deep student of like philosophy and psychology, everything that answers the questions around why about all the three above kind of excites me a lot more. Some of my handy but deteriorating skills are dance, some sports, and coding as well, which I'm a little sad about, and I try to keep up with every now and then. So some of my professional experiences. Currently, I'm leading product marketing for some of the products at Google Cloud. But before this, I worked in both ends of the spectrum. Essentially, some of the largest enterprises, things like Deloitte, Cisco, Goldman Sachs, and Salesforce. Also, some startups as well. So I've had the opportunity to both see both ends of the spectrum in terms of the size of the companies I work for, and in terms of the functions, going from a builder to a hustler. Uh, so before I get into the topic, I want to start uh, with the why, essentially why I wanted to talk about this topic. Personally, why this motivates me. So there are some quirks that are built into my personality, driven by my work experience, that actually motivate me. So as I've said, I'm deeply passionate about stories. So some things that annoy me are like poor storytelling, either be in terms of marketing or in terms of products again. Uh, an extension, how do you identify poor stories? That is some questions that we get. So things that involve, let's say, if you're speaking, if hyperbolic superlatives, is this the best thing? Is this the most amazing thing? I had the worst day. So those superlatives make me question: is it really the worst day, or do you really think that we are thinking very at a very surface level? Similarly, intensify words. Are you literally starving? Are you actually freezing? Literally and actually mean a lot of different things, and even things like lack of nuance, especially in a world driven by a lot of content where we are overloaded with contents and channels. um, Lack of nuance starts to get to us. But these are all like external things. But what in terms of work? Misunderstood concepts actually annoy me, specifically product market fit. What started as like a good thing, but is largely misunderstood. Especially, it's important in terms of the context in which we are speaking today. If you already achieved success or so-called product market fit with enterprises, how do you start new and how do you move down market into SMBs? So I want to unpack this concept a little bit more. I want to unpack is how should we look at product market fit in detail, not just at that surface level, to get into the habit or the muscle of being able to expand into new markets. So let me expand by what I mean by product market fit is misunderstood and lacks nuance. So this is a word that is thrown around too lightly, at least whenever in my experience I've seen products are not taken to market. Firstly, we say it the way we actually say it. It's not product market fit. Product is not taken to market. Market exists. Market problems exist already. Products are built to solve a market's problem. It should always start with the market. I know all of us will agree when we say something like this, but actually, if we sit back and think in our day to day on how we make decisions, We as product managers, especially when we sit and think through how are we making decisions, are we really thinking about the market or what we can do in terms of engineering? The second thing where it lacks nuances, PMF is not achieved. Product market fit is a continuous journey. You achieve PMF only at a given time. Market is continuously moving, market is continuously evolving, either because of competitors, either because of alternatives in technology that come in, especially with AI, how rapidly it's disrupting every market. PMF should not be thought of as a constant concept. It needs to continuously evolve. And lastly, this is my biggest pet peeve, is a market is not defined by your product. Uh, I'll take an easiest example. Your product is not a CRM product. Essentially, you are solving a problem in customer relationships and management. That is the way we need to think about it. Although it's good to articulate it in simple terms, a market is not defined by your product in most cases, unless you are genuinely defining a market category. So, what is the right way? What is the underlying problem beneath all this? Product market fit, when we look at it at a surface level, it goes back to the same storytelling. It overlooks the emotional connection consumers build with products. In most cases, your customers or consumers can't voice it out, but really they're loving your product because they built an emotional connection with it. I'll take the easiest example, Slack. If Slack goes down for even a minute, I know like most organizations will throw a fit, because one, their work is dependent on it, but also the look at the emotional connection that people develop with a product like Slack. So great products achieve this fit because they're able to earn a consumer's trust. Essentially, that builds an emotional connection. So I think if I were to unpack product market fit, or if we were to look at any new market definition of product market fit, the thing to unpack or solve for is a consumer's trust. So that is key to solving any of the PMF problems. So, what is the right way to look at it then? If we are not solving for PMF or product market fit, and if we really want to start with the market, how do we actually look at it? So, not sure how many of you are aware of this, but if you're not, I definitely suggest checking this out. Brian Balfour, who's the CEO of Reforge, has published a model called Product Market Model and Channel Fit. I'm deeply inspired by that level of nuanced thinking in basically taking another stab at product market fit. Basically, uh, it adds a lot of nuance and lot of clarity around how we only think to a certain degree in product market fit. So the representation that I've put here is another slightly different take on Brian Balfour's model. It's deeply inspired by the concepts, but uh, it also includes some of the experiences that I've taken in. So how does this work? At its crux, we always start outside in. We start with the market. By market, I'm not talking about a general market like CRM market. Who are the actual collection of people who are willing to pay you to solve a given problem? What is the context of their problem? What is the context in which they're looking to solve their problem? It is a deeply detailed articulation of a group of people, again, who are willing to pay for a solution. Then basically, let's look at it in terms of an example which makes it easy to understand. So let's look at CRM as an example. I guess that's the easiest way to look at it. Now, if you look at this from an outside in perspective, the level of detailing you'll need to have for something like a market is what is the problem they're facing, especially for in customer relationship management enterprises with, let's say, more than 10,000 employees. So the biggest problems they face are around disparate data sources. Basically, the data is coming from multiple different channels. They have inefficient sales and service mechanisms. At the end of the day, what they're looking to solve for is a single view of customer. If I'm trying to reach a customer, at what stage of their sales journey are they in? If I'm reaching to a customer in terms of customer service, what is their problem? Can I look at all the data sources and tell and put the data in one place and explain what their problem is so that someone in my company can act on it. Then you start to work backwards into the product. Essentially, what is the solution that you're offering? So if we, in this case, you need a suite of products that will help combine the data from different data sources and present a single view of the customer in multiple contexts. What is the context? Is it a sales context? Is it a customer service context? So that is the solution that you're offering. Now, let's layer in the next two pieces. How do you take this to market? Now, how do you sell this to an enterprise? As explained itself, the product is a suite of solutions. You can also imagine that it takes time to set up something like this. It takes time to onboard your teams to use a product like this. It takes effort to maintain operations and processes on top of a product like this. So if you work backwards, you just can't read some post on something like LinkedIn and just sign up and pay like $100,000 or something like this for a product like this. You, going back to what I've explained before, everything is centered around customer trust. For a complex product like this, you need a human to actually trust this product, to trust someone, that someone, it is someone's job, someone is accountable for making me successful with this product. So that by making this choice, I'm my job is not at risk. That brings me to the third concept in this, which is channels. So because it needs a lot of effort to build such a high amount of trust, your acquisition costs to acquire new customers become very high. So the typical channels to use to sell this product or take this product to market are paid channels. You need to write content around how someone is successful with this product. Similarly, your engagement with your potential customers becomes high touch. You need people to actually engage. You need people to actually engage on this. And lastly, this also closely relates to the pricing model. What is the level of trust you need in a given solution to pay for a customer to pay you? Like, are you charging $5? Then the level of trust they need in your that you need in your product is not that high, because you can do it with a credit card. It's a low risk item. But are you charging like $100,000? Then the way in which you're charging money also becomes important. You can't hope to have a lot of variable costs in the pricing model. Essentially, something like subscription pricing might be the best way to go to market with this. So, using this example, what the point I want to make is, it's not just enough to think about just your market as a generic concept and what you're offering as a product. You also need to think about how what are the channels you're using to tell your product story. And the crux of this is the channel that you're using establishing trust with your potential buyer. Similarly, when they trust you, when they trust your product story, uh, do they trust you enough to pay the costs that you're offering your product for? That is where model becomes a lot more important. If your product is a high cost product, essentially, what is the level of engagement in terms of models that you have for the same product? Now, imagine this product is successful. The CRM product actually gained a lot of traction with enterprises, but you want to expand into new markets, especially you want to go into SMBs. How does this look? Essentially, the entire thesis that you had, or the success that you had with enterprise sales motions, goes for a toss here, because now you're dealing in SMBs, you're dealing with smaller teams. They need lesser change management. They're very agile. They might not be solving the range of problems that you had with an enterprise. They might not even have too many data sources like what an enterprise does. They might be working with like one or two systems, especially if you're a digital native company. You might be building all your tech stack in like one or two data sources. So most of the thesis that you had about the problems before does not exist for SMBs. Again, and in the same way, if they're looking to solve a very, very specific problem, they might not be willing to pay big ticket items or basically a large amount for your product. You can't go to market with the same pricing model. They are looking to solve a very specific use case. They are not looking for large scale transformations. They're looking to get a particular job done very, very quickly. So the obvious solution they will rely on is something like a self-service adoption. Can I just pay for what I'm using? Or in other words, consumption pricing or pay as you go pricing. You might have heard of this in multiple terms. But the crux of what is happening is I only want to pay for the problem I'm solving. And my problem is not that wide enough or not that deep enough. And lastly, since the pricing is designed like this, the channels also evolve. I need not have a long cycled high touch engagement for you to convince me to buy this product. The level of value that I'm looking to derive out of a product is very small. So I can just bank on word of mouth. I can just look at other startups or on how they're solving their problems. So this is where word of mouth becomes important. And since the amount that they're ready to pay you is also very less, you can't hope to spend a lot of amount on customer acquisition costs. Your customer acquisition costs also must come down. So essentially all of these things are tied together, but the center of all of these things is what is the context of the problem, or what is the market, what is the clear articulation of the problem that you're trying to solve for. So when you're looking, uh, this is what you need to keep in mind when you're moving down market towards a startup or an SMB. Let's actually walk through. So starting with the market, one lesson I've learned the hard way is you need to be really, really specific, especially when you're moving down market towards startups or SMBs. So let's say the traditional definition in the CRM example itself is I'm building a software for SDRs or sales development representatives. That's not enough. That might be okay for enterprises because the depth of problems they have is a lot more. Especially when you go down market, you need to be as specific as I've tried to articulate here. A sales development representative is facing uncertainty in basically closing a particular deal. So what they're looking to solve for is just understanding at what stage their customer or their prospect is in terms of closing a deal. This might just be a Chrome extension. This might be the simplest solution that they're looking for. We can't hope to go to market with a highly complex CRM solution to solve this particular problem for them. And the second thing is your product needs to be simple. The first thing that we need to understand about startups and SMBs here, they're looking to move really, really fast. And this is not their end goal. Essentially, their end goal is to capture as much market as possible. They are looking to get a particular job done. So we can't expect a startup or an SMB to spend tons and tons of time in configuring large scale products unless you're offering something like cloud storage. So the product itself needs to be very, very simple to demonstrate value. So something like having a uh, one-click user experience to just adopt and use. So that should be the goal. That should be the target when we are trying to capture the SMB market. The third thing is the model. So like I've talked about before, so it all boils down to agility. So essentially, is the product conducive for self-service? Basically, I as a startup just want to pay for what value I'm seeing from the product, or probably what problem you're solving for me. So pay as you go is the preferred model in general for down market. And lastly, channels. So channel, basically, they're looking to they're looking for signals of trust in terms of word of mouth. How are other startups solving this problem? Is the solution that you're offering to them for a problem should be packaged into a story so that they can share their success easily with another startup or another SMB. That is how we keep our cost of acquisition costs also low in terms of trying to capture mass market. It's a simple mathematical problem, especially, let's say, for example, to capture a big enterprise, the price tag that you have on your product can be something like $100,000. So you might need just 10 customers, or like 100 customers to get to basically $1 million revenue. But if you're only charging $1,000 to solve a specific problem for down market, we need 1,000 customers to actually get a similar range of revenue. So we can't hope to have the same customer acquisition costs. The focus should move from reliability towards scale. So beyond the framework, all of this boils down to only two frame of two frames of thought. Essentially, if you want to take away something from this, I would love for you to take away only two things. One is, our thinking or every decision that we make about a product when we are moving down market or when we are expanding into startups or SMBs should be centered around one thing, that is capturing trust. If you're writing a marketing message, if you're building a new UI for your product, or if you're defining a new pricing model, always evaluate this on whether a customer would trust you enough to solve a problem using your product and pay you what you're charging them. And when you're expanding into new market, also keep in mind the second thing is, markets are living organisms. They change. Your existing market itself might change. Forget about expanding into new market. So always keep a tab of how your market is moving, either based on competition or new alternatives that are coming up. We need to survive on an existing one to approach a new market. And whenever you're approaching a new market, start with a fresh perspective. It should be like day zero again, moving into a new market. You might have some baseline, you might take away a lot of elements from your first market, but whenever you're moving down market, it needs to be a day zero game. Lastly, I'll go back to where I started. Essentially, I believe every successful product is a story that leaves an emotional connection. They're like art. So, and like every art, a successful product will change a thought process, will change the way you look at a given market. I'll go back to Slack's example. They'll Slack gave us a new way to think about email, or even communication between two different people in an office. They'll invoke a feeling, and also they express an observation about what's working and what's not working. Keep this in mind when you're looking to build an emotional connection with your consumer through your product. With that, I think we can move on to the questions.
All right. Well, thank you. While you all are queuing up your questions, and I hope you're getting some questions ready. So again, please drop them into the Q&A section. I will get started, and maybe I will start where you finished, and frankly, where you started too, which is really on that product that invokes that feeling. And so I know you use Slack as a great example of a product that I think has delighted all of us who've used it in many ways, and I think continues to delight us. But I'm curious, as you think about new products coming to market, what products inspire you? What products give you that sense of art these days? What are you looking towards for inspiration?
That's a great question. Maybe whenever we get asked questions like this, a traditional mode of thinking would be to think of the user experience of a product. But I'd like to take this in a different direction. One of the recent products that took me by surprise was Midjourney. So this is a new AI product. Essentially, it really made a splash on the market after ChatGPT and Gemini or whatever that is. Essentially, in terms of image creation, and the reason why Midjourney blew me away was because of a single decision. Especially whenever we are launching a new product, or when we are taking a new product to market, we tend to be very possessive of our distribution channels. We need to own distribution so that we capitalize on that customer base and then basically build off of it, expand into new markets, etc. Midjourney's entire distribution is through Discord. Essentially, they don't have a separate user interface. They'll ask you to join Discord, and their entire prompts are built inside Discord. And uh, initially, I didn't think much of it, but when I started using Midjourney, I realized the reason for that decision. It is very so the models of Midjourney itself are very complex. The depth of models that Midjourney offers are too deep. So as if I'm an expert user, uh, and if I want a very nuanced answer from Midjourney in terms of an image, uh, I cannot do this in terms of I cannot get there easily in terms of education that is available on the internet. Midjourney would have had to spend a lot of time educating their users to get from 0 to 1, or even more from 1 to 100. By using Discord as the distribution channel, they solve that problem with community. I
Hmm.
can scroll up and see how others have designed their prompts, and I'm learning how to prompt Midjourney to get me my answer. So they sacrifice their distribution channel to actually get scale. This is having the decision blew me away because of the vision they had in terms of how to grow the pie in order to
Yeah.
actually win in the long term rather than having a short term view.
Right, that's really interesting. It's a kind of a different lens of sort of a network effect where it's like you're able to take advantage and
Yeah,
capitalize on the way you've observed other people interacting.
yeah.
Uh, I love that. That's a great nugget of information. Next question. What do you think about the cold email and cold calls for like a small enterprise product? So how do you think about, sort of growing your base using that approach?
Yeah, I'm probably going to give an answer that generally I would hate to hear as well. It depends. Primarily, it depends on. I'll go back to the same thing. It's all centered around trust. So, is the problem complex enough? Is the problem very complex? Then I might not trust a cold email to do the justification for me to trust you enough to actually click on something. So I need to see a proof point. But if the problem is not that complex enough, or then a cold email might be okay, if it is well crafted, of course. Uh, in general, I also want to leave with another thought that there is a lot of fatigue in terms of any content in terms of emails or social channels. Uh, I would actually throw a word of caution there. Uh, but I it depends on the complexity of the solution that you're offering, and second, will you be able to at least build traction with cold emails? If the solution, if you can express the solution in visual terms within an email or with a few simple clicks, then absolutely go for it. You'll be able to get an initial round of traction, and then you can scale from there.
That's good advice. Good advice. Um, all right. So then maybe switching to some of your personal experiences. What are some examples where you've successfully penetrated down into the SMB or startup market? And what are some specific strategies that you put to work that you think really help to make your product successful?
So I'll go back to the favorite example that I gave. So I've seen Slack grow. I used to work with Salesforce. I've seen Slack grow from small, uh, from enterprise and start and uh, become part of the collective psyche in the market. So, and specifically, the nuance in that example is Slack as a product was very, very easy to use, very, very intuitive to understand. So even if you are offering for an enterprise, you can make some tweaks to your pricing model, and capture down market easily, because SMBs and startups understand the value, and you're solving a problem, and the solution is not complex enough. I can set it up and basically send an instant message to someone else, to some other users. I can bring together a team there. Um, there are other examples or other products that I worked for that might not follow the same beats. It all boils down again to the same concepts. Do I trust you enough to actually go through this motion, this particular set of steps, and to solve for you to solve this problem for me.
Yeah. Personally, I don't know if we even talked about this, but I too was one of the few that had started with a sales-led growth product and went down market.
Yeah.
And so I think there are, to your point, maybe there's pricing or monetization strategies that you can leverage. I think SEO and SEM are a good way, maybe back to that question about, cold emails, cold calls. That's one strategy. But another strategy is, paid content. How do I get paid content out there so that I come high sort of in the search rankings? And then think about, that acquisition flow, that funnel. And so are there things as you think about sort of that acquisition funnel or sort of, marketing campaigning that you've done, other tactics that you think the audience might benefit from?
Let me break the answer into two parts.
Yeah,
So first part would be what not to do. Second part
like
would be what to do.
I like that.
And this is from painful experiences in the past, I guess. First suggestion I would make is, uh, don't fall for the hot takes or concepts in the market and think they would apply to your use case seamlessly. I'll give an example. Things like uh, product led growth or community led growth. Uh, you need to spend some time to see if that is actually applicable for you. Uh, the crux of the this I think this is common knowledge that it is practically impossible to move from a sales led growth down to product led growth unless you actually strip away all the complex parts of product and virtually create a new product suite for a separate motion, primarily because uh, in product led growth there is no human in the center as the thesis to establish trust with your customer. Without a human, it's very, very tough to actually establish the trust. So the product itself needs to be super intuitive and the value should be very, very immediately apparent, or else this transition doesn't work. This goes back to the same thesis that I mentioned. You don't have PMF or PLG if you are successful in a sales led growth model. So definitely don't fall for the hot things in the market. It has to be tailor made for your use case, it has to be tailor made for your situation. The easiest way to think is put yourself in the shoes of your prospect. How would, let's say, how would I trust a particular solution? I go and search in Google. You're the first rank that comes up. Google is giving me a signal of trust. Then I
Mhm.
reach out to someone on the website. Someone picks up the phone and has a conversation with me, gives me a demo. A person is giving me a signal of trust. Then I see and start playing around with a proof of concept. My team is giving me a signal of trust. It is just trust signals layered on until you basically capture the money, I guess.
Yeah. So I think back to your point, I love it. It's like really break it down. What is going to give people those signals? How does that apply to your particular product? Don't go for sort of a one size fits all model. And I hear you. We had to really think through that purchasing experience. We had to deeply understand, what does that SMB buyer need,
Yeah.
right? Because it is different. It is very different. All right, next question for you. Can you differentiate the reasons of why an enterprise merchant would churn versus SMB? Startups and SMB tend to have a fluctuating business, and there is increased churn compared to the enterprise. How do you deal with real churn from the SMB segment?
Yep. So, uh, to answer this question, what we need to understand is what is the motivation of your buyer? If you think about a large enterprise, when you're purchasing a software product, the motivation is to not, in most cases, the motivation is to not rock the boat in an enterprise. You're making a purchasing decision of a large scale software product. You want to change a process, and the process moves slowly, and the process evolves slowly. So a lot of it is built around reliability. So can the software product I'm purchasing create a reliable process for me? So a decision is being centered around reliability. But if we think about the motivation of an SMB or a startup, they're looking to solve a specific problem. They're looking to get stuff done and move on. The motivation is speed. They're not looking, they are looking to rock the boat. They are looking to disrupt and move on to the next thing. So in most cases, you need to think about scale. The churn will be definitely higher because the jobs to be done in a SMB or a startup are much are very specific and very small. So you need to really understand what is the exact context in which a startup is solving your problem, so that you can scale according to that. We can't hope to generalize saying that all the SMBs or all the startups in something like healthcare are my target market. No, even in healthcare, they're doing something very specific. Horizontals work a lot better. Getting into the details of what is the motivation to purchase your product in the first place, uh, that itself is very different.
Yeah. And you may even find too, on top of what you just said, that some churn is okay, it's expected, because some SMBs will have infrequent use,
Yeah,
right? Versus an enterprise may have more continuous use. So I think it's back to your point of it's nuanced. You
yeah,
need to be specific and you need to deeply understand that buyer, that customer's needs.
yeah, yeah. The motivation.
Yeah. Now, you talked about, in order to do this, right? I kind of have to start with that clean sheet of paper. It's like a 0 to 1 all over again. And so maybe talk to those people that are contemplating this decision. Who do you need to get into the team? Like, where do you start in terms of, if I want to build this, who do I need to bring to the table to go after this new market? And sort of what team dynamics may need to shift or change, versus like your more traditional sales-led model?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll go back to the same starting point. Let's look at what are the motivations of an enterprise buyer and probably an SMB buyer. Um, at the risk of oversimplification, the motivation in an enterprise buyer would be reliability, and in SMBs would be agility. You're moving fast. So whatever we are selling to these two markets should support these two notions. So let's take in case of enterprises. So if it's reliable, that means we need to touch the enterprise buyer at multiple stages, like we went through earlier, be it through content at top of the funnel. So that is a trust signal. And there is a human involved in the loop. That is a trust signal. And there is a demo involved in the loop. That's a trust signal. So all these actually translate into different teams. There is a marketing team. There's a field marketing team. There is like a content marketing team that's actually pushing top of the funnel. Then there is multiple layers in a sales team that is basically interacting with the prospect to close the deal. There is a pre-sales in most cases to showcase the demo, proof of concept, etc. All of this are trying to establish trust signals over a period of time with an enterprise buyer. It takes like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, depending on the price tag. Now, this model gets flipped for an SMB. They need to make a decision now. They need to make a decision maybe within like 20 days, 30 days. So that is the lead time you're looking at. So you can't hope to establish these many touch points. So flipping that back into your organization, the amount of decisions you have to take in a given amount of time increases rapidly. So all these teams need to collapse closer. So this is where my thesis is, this is where the growth function evolved, where growth function is literally a collapsed function between product marketing and sales. Essentially, they can flex all three muscles with one simple goal: rapidly iterate, experiment, just get something out, get feedback, get something out, get feedback. So your focus should become uh, collecting feedback as much as possible and launching experiments and learning as much as possible. So it's a different muscle to have in general.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, keep going. You sounds like maybe there was more to add.
No, I meant like the reason I left it at this level is because uh, I can't generally say that, oh, you need a growth function to do this, or you need like a lean team to do this. Every company and every use case looks different, but whatever decision or team structure you make with rapid iteration at your objective as your objective, you will end up with the right answer
Yeah.
because you'll organically evolve into that solution.
Yeah, and I think what I hear you saying is, oftentimes whatever the organizational structure is, sometimes you have to optimize for what it isn't.
Yeah.
And so when you're saying agility, I hear, hey, if you've got marketing and product and, development, all these teams working together, they're in different functions, make sure that you're meeting at a regular cadence, like getting those people on the same page and doing that often.
Yeah.
So that you have that agility, because I don't know how many times you said rapid, but that's what I took away, uh, certainly from this.
Yeah. Yep,
No,
and maybe just to put that into perspective, we can't hope to target them with something like a white paper and convert them into a lead.
right.
So that would take months. Rather, your marketing message should be in the product console. Uh, Maybe you're guiding them through the next steps in the experience. So the amount of surface that you have to play with becomes much lesser. Touch points become lesser. So get stuff out as quickly as possible.
Right. So we can't work so independently because we don't have these long independent kind of paths. We have to work tighter and closer together.
Yeah.
That's great. Maybe another thing to touch on is the data, right? What's the data, that you're typically looking at in terms of metrics and where you find value? Um, let's start there.
Yep. Um, as a guiding light, I always like to measure uh, the customer acquisition cost to make my broader decisions. Like if my customer acquisition cost is continuing to remain closer to what my enterprise targeting was, then I'm failing. I cannot scale for an SMB market. But if I were to break it down into my day to day, specifically, I would look at three things. One is the number of customers you're acquiring, the amount of engagement they have in terms of usage. Basically, product usage metrics will differ. But the third thing you need to look at is churn. Uh, Churn becomes supremely important in terms of SMB because in enterprises, typically once you purchase such a complex product, churn is also slow. They can't rip and replace software. Not in the case of SMB. They'll just rip software in a heartbeat. So, and if the churn is hitting closer to 20% for you, that means you have a problem. You don't have PMF, or probably like the same model that I mentioned. You don't have a fit. You need to refine. Although you're acquiring customers because of the brand value, your churn is a problem. So these three things, basically number of customers, a usage metric that gives clear usage of the value you're providing, and lastly, churn.
Nice. Nice. Is some a great piece of wisdom there. And then let's wrap it up. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. So if someone has anything burning that they want to ask, please drop it in. Um, Otherwise, I'd maybe love to pivot to the communication side. You talked about really needing to understand that buyer's needs. And so sounds like I can't take my existing messaging and just repurpose it. So maybe can you share a little bit about what you've done as a process, um, and kind of how you position the product or how you think about product positioning to this new market?
Yeah, that makes sense. So if I were, we started with um, again the fundamentals or first principles, understanding who we are trying to sell to. One example that I love to quote is, especially when we started moving down market, we realized uh, how few uh, how few are the number of people involved in making a decision or purchasing decision. In enterprises, typically there are large teams that are sitting and making decisions. Probably it needs like consensus from like 10 to 8 people. Maybe in an SMB or a startup, a developer is making that decision. It's just one person. And this is the first place where we started. Like, who's actually making the purchasing decision, or who all are the parties involved? The second piece that we went to uncover is what is their context. I'm not carefully using the word persona because persona is very limiting. You can just say distributed backend developer, but going beyond that, what is the context in which they're making the decision? What is the problem they're stuck in? and they're looking to your product to solve the problem for. Once you have these two, every aspect of what you do after, basically messaging and positioning, falls in place, because you'll stop talking like how you talk to an enterprise. You'll get very, very specific. You're not accelerating developer productivity anymore. You are making it easy for someone to like integrate software into a CI/CD pipeline better, or some. You'll get very, very specific on what your product exists for, specifically because the number of people involved in making a decision are fewer, and you're talking to the builder a lot more than a decision maker. So these things, if I were to distill all these thoughts into a few simple points: less jargon, be specific, and use as little space as possible. So these things will get you trust in down market quickly.
That's great. The buyer and the user may be one and the same in this case.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a follow-up kind of relevant question here, which is, like you mentioned, SMBs are super busy. What communication strategy have you seen that's helpful to engage with the SMB customer? So any tactics that have been really successful for you?
So the biggest success we've seen is in adopting scale channels. So let's take an example. SMBs, because of the function of time, they won't have time to sit like hours and hours with you on demos, etc. Are you able to distill your product message into a LinkedIn post? uh, you're using very little space. You need to be very specific, and you need to clearly show the aha very quickly. So basically, trust the scale channels. If you're not able to convey the value proposition quickly, then you need to rethink how you're telling your story. The second piece is focus on education. Like, there are typically only two steps. You reach out to them on some scale channel, like LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or whatever it might be, or even like email for that matter. Then once they come to your website, the value should be apparent. They need to sign up then and there. So the messaging should speak to them. So you only have two steps in the journey to actually capture them. So always think about what is the shortest way in which you can capture a journey. So that means the first channel is always scaled. Second is basically your home ground, be it the console or the product page, for them to convert.
Nice. And then get that time to value quickly.
Mhm.
One last one. When SMBs are onboarding with your product, what is your advice to ensure a smoother handoff between developer who is integrating your product to the actual user who's using your product?
This might sound like cliched advice, but if you put yourself in the shoes of an actual user, uh, are you annoyed by the onboarding journey that you yourself are providing? So uh, there are two points I want to make in this. Your onboarding journey should not be too little or should not be too much. It should be just enough. So how do you figure that out is whether it annoys you as a user. If it is too little, if I'm required to actually go switch a screen to documentation to figure out what to do, it's too little. If there are too many pop-ups asking me to go to the next step if I don't want to, it's too much. So the only way you'll get the right amount is if you know the user so well enough to be able to second guess. Uh, I'll, I'm not sure where I've heard the story, but I can give one example of a successful company outside called Brex. Sorry, Played, I guess. The founder was on a messaging basis with their initial set of customers. So they really knew them as friends. So almost you can second guess what their frustrations are. I'm not saying that you need to get on a WhatsApp with all of your customers, but the degree to which you need to have clarity on what a user pain points uh, are at that level. So unless you achieve that, you won't be able to crack SMB. And more often than not, the hidden nuggets of these information are in the product usage data. So that's why I said churn becomes very important. Once you see a high churn problem, if you start to track back at the logs and the events data on the console, you'll start to get a signal of whether you're doing too much or too little.
Right. Go look at your funnel analytics, see where they're falling off. I love that. And I love this like Goldilocks syndrome that you're talking about. Like it's got to be just right.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. And frankly, I think you should have a great relationship with your customers, right? There should be those people you can call up and say, how was this experience? And if you can't call them, that's what, user testing is for. Um, all right. So given we're at time, my last and final question is, if people want to get in touch, how can they find you? And maybe the one last piece is where, if they want to learn more, what's maybe the top couple of things that you'd recommend for learning content or books that you love?
Yeah, of course. If you want to reach out to me, the easiest place is LinkedIn. I'm active and alive on LinkedIn. So, and I try to respond to every message that I get. So please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat about my experiences, actually learn from yours as well. This is a never ending journey. If you want to start, I would recommend two sources based on who you are, like going back to the persona. If you are a technical founder who's just starting off, First Round Capital has launched a new course. Specifically, they have a different take on the same thing that I walked through today. But it is clear enough for you to basically operationalize and build a muscle around understanding market product fit. If you are an enterprise rather, or if you already have an existing customer base, I would uh, definitely recommend Brian Balfour's product market model channel fit or some of the growth series. Brian Balfour, if for those of you who don't know, is the founder of Reforge, I guess, and he has a ton of interesting courses on Reforge. Definitely recommend that. Most of the talk that I gave today is heavily inspired by his thoughts and content.
That's great. I think almost every product leader comes on here tends to recommend Reforge these days. So that's a signal of something. Arun, thank you so much. This was a really great session. So thank you for your time. I know we all appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody's gonna watch this again later too and keep taking away learnings from this. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Take care.